I don't know why these myths still persist. I've been hearing about this one since I was a kid, and I've even heard it from reputable sources, which is not acceptable in the field of strength athletics where you need to know what exactly the limits of human ability are. And that is, of course, the myth, the urban legend of the mom who lifted the car to save her trapped child. This is something we have all heard. And because of that, there's a lot of people walking around with this misconception that we all have this hidden strength that we can tap into. We just choose not to. It's only in a life or death situation that we can pull a Goku level 19 Super Saiyan power up and summon this strength that's like 5 times what we could normally do. I hate to break it to you guys, but that just isn't the case. And I addressed that in one of my last videos. It's a little long, it's a half hour, links below, but it's thoroughly edited for your viewing enjoyment. It's a good watch, a good way to kill some time. Talks all about the limits of human strength and what would be required to push the numbers a little bit further. So I put towards the end, which means that most of you just didn't watch it, which is why I'm retreading it, the story of Angela Cavallo, who started this misreporting, is what started this entire urban legend that people still cite today without questioning. Yes, I am doing a reaction to my own video. It is the only way I know not to get another copyright strike. So we're going to talk about why people believe these things in an era where the entire world is covered in Wi-Fi and everybody has a cell phone camera to record things. Why we believe things that we would question thoroughly if it happened in front of our eyes. But if it happened far away sometime a long time ago, we just turn our head to the side and say, yeah, no, that checks out. So we're going to get to the bottom of that. So I'm going to show you guys a clip. It's a short one. Let's get into it. Remember, Bromley shirts, barbellapparel.com. Get them now. On the topic of hidden sources of strength that can immediately improve your performance, there is a cultural myth that persists that human beings are actually capable of superhuman feats. If only we could just focus hard enough or come across a dire enough circumstance. The most common myth is the mom lifting the car off of her child, which I've been hearing over and over and over since I was a kid, and it sounds more stupid now than it did back then. First of all, lifting a car is a parlor trick. I know because we do it in strongman, because it's a parlor trick. Sometimes they have you pick them up and carry them, sometimes they have you flip them, sometimes they have you deadlift one side of it. The reason they do this is because cars look more impressive because the total weight is very heavy. But just like with flipping 1,000-pound tires, we like telling people we do it because it has the word 1,000 pounds in it. 1,000 pounds! But it doesn't require actually physically moving 1,000 pounds. So this whole myth goes back to Angela Cavallo, who was a mom in her late 50s who came out to find her son unconscious after the 1964 Impala he was working on slipped off the jack. She apparently summoned all of her motherly might in order to lift the car and free him. Oh my God, what a miracle. Except she didn't free him. A neighborhood kid and 2 others came out and reinserted the jack and helped him out. She just estimated that in the process, she lifted the car around 4 inches. Now, the amount of force needed to lift an Impala 4 inches, assuming it moved 4 inches, which it definitely didn't. It's not the 3,295 pounds of curb weight. It's not 2,000 pounds. It's not 1,000 pounds. It was probably 100 pounds of force. As the suspension gives a bunch of assistance and you don't have to get the tires off the ground to make the actual car move several inches. So that clip right there shows like perfectly. You see, I want to say that's Franco Columbu. It's a famous clip of him moving the back end of like a small European car. Even that looks impressive, even though those cars weigh like 4 ounces. But you see the suspension, like the shock absorbers that support the car will lift the chassis of the car before you have the full weight in your hand. So most people can go out and pull against the back end of a car, especially where like most of the weight doesn't exist. Most of it's in the front and the engine, and you can feel it move a little bit. That give, those couple inches, is the suspension helping out. And it really only takes a couple 100 pounds of force to feel that. So imagine a mom who thinks her son is dying, leans into the car, tries to pick it up with an awkward grip, nearly 60 years old, untrained, not big, not a lot of muscle mass to work with. She feels it gives. She probably told a reporter, yeah, I moved it a few inches. And that turns into mom lifted the car off of her son. Now, if there is a story of someone lifting a car, it's because the positioning of the car allowed it to be moved by exerting a very human amount of force, not because they momentarily unlocked some hidden superhuman ability in a crisis. That type of belief leads to ridiculous shit, like this kid who thought that his family and community's belief in him would grant him the ability to set a new bench record and press over 700 pounds. That's one of my favorite stories that deserves its own video. This kid, God bless his cotton socks, was so enamored with the concept of belief trumping like material reality that he not only convinced his friends and family that he could will himself to bench press over 700 pounds, which I think at the time was the record or close to the record. This might have been when Scott Mendelson's like 715 was the raw record. This kid looks like he's like a chunky, maybe 220. He's not very developed. All in all, he's probably got like a 330 bench in him. And he decided to go over double that and get a whole media campaign around him. And I'm not saying that belief in human beings being capable of more is going to lead everybody to go do a bunch of reckless, dangerous shit. But there is a point where it becomes irresponsible to spread a narrative that isn't rooted in reality.
It's more of a mental game than anything. When you think about powerlifting and weightlifting, you gotta be more mental than physical. If it feels extremely heavy, just block it out as best I can.
The average person, no, any person, if you're a human being and you have basic biology determining how you move, there isn't a switch you can flip that can cause you to lift more. The way that you get stronger is through slow, steady progression that does utilize more of your nervous system, but that still has a limit. If you're using all of your muscle, there is still a cap to what that muscle can put out, and we can measure it. Like we mathematically know based on the cross-sectional area of the muscle tissue you have, how much force you can put out. So you're not going to get that amount of muscle to put out 5 times more force, the same way you're not going to get a Toyota Corolla to go 500 miles an hour by pushing the gas pedal harder. Now, if this is even remotely close to 700 pounds, which it's not, I mean, these are generic ass plates that have a huge margin of error. I'm not even going to go into that. If it's 600, the most impressive thing about this is that he didn't just shred his pec insertions. That's absolutely crazy. I mean, I guess that's a byproduct of just being young and made out of magic and rubber bands. But this could have gone wrong so many different ways. And it absolutely would have been everybody that pulled this blind belief bullshit that would have been responsible for broken ribs, a punctured lung, torn tendons, or anything else that would have permanently put him out of commission. Guys, if I can help fund this channel and help you solve a problem, I call that a win-win. So please allow me one moment to preach the good word of Boostcamp. I tend to get a little complex when I'm writing workout plans. Tracking progress for these programs is hugely important, but options were never great. I would write these long, complex progressions by hand into a notebook, or I would carry a binder filled with spreadsheets I printed off of LiftVault. That's why I'm here to introduce you to Boostcamp. Boostcamp is the easy way to track training progress directly from your phone. Their library of programs features countless dozens of powerlifting and hypertrophy-specific programs from your favorite creators, including Jeffrey Verity Schofield, Johnny Candido, Eric Helms, Greg Knuckles, Alberto Nunez, and of course, yours truly. Boostcamp also has exclusive programs that you just won't find anywhere else. Select the one best suited to your needs and watch the sets, reps, weights, and exercises populate automatically. Don't guess at that one weight you lifted that one time for how many reps again? Have your log of training with you at all times for easy reference in the convenience of your phone. Not only does Boostcamp have a stellar product, but their support is the only reason this channel exists. So thank you, the viewer, and thank you to Boostcamp. Check it out today. The link is in the description. It isn't just stupid, it's highly dangerous, and the kid's lucky he walked away with any of his limbs still attached. Now, to be clear, this lack of ability is a very good thing, because if you could will yourself, after decades of being sedentary, to lift the several thousand pounds required to levitate a 1964 Impala off the ground, you would undoubtedly shred all of your muscles in a hamburger and lose all of your tendon insertion points. The bruising and bleeding would probably kill you, so the more you know. I had a lot of people make comments about the kid in the yellow shirt. I hope he's okay. That was, in fact, not real footage. Your body doesn't fold like wet spaghetti like that under a load. But there were some genuinely concerned people in the comments. So that was it. That was a piece on hysterical strength and Angela Cavallo. And I got into that because so much about strength training and human performance has to do with the nervous system, which gives this kind of like cushion. It's this idea that we haven't trained this one thing that's not just growing muscle tissue, but actually making efficient use of it, that tells people that, yes, you're actually not lifting as much weight as theoretically you could right now, but that exists in a pretty small margin. And that margin itself is actually really important, because even that very human limit, which you're not talking about 4 or 5 times your strength, you're talking about like 5-10% maybe. And that governor that prevents you from meeting that limit is what keeps you alive, is what keeps you healthy. And we see this with people that take PEDs, because some of the things that you take overcharge your nervous system so you get stronger beyond what you could get from growing muscle tissue. It's faster than your body can physically grow new tissue. So it's entirely neurological adaptations. It can be in a matter of, some things that act really fast, you might feel immediately, but over a couple of days of like trenbolone use, your nervous system is firing immediately. You already feel the weight moving lighter. And what happens, the rest of your body couldn't catch up. You shred tendons, you tear muscles. And I know people who are extremely strong, looked extremely durable, and got severe career-ending injuries because the wear with all those excessive weights that they didn't take time to build up into and adapt to set them up for an injury that took them out. And it's kind of tragic. It's the dark side of trying to get it too soon, too fast. And you can even have that happen to you if you're not on PEDs, if you're just really reckless with your training and believe that your body can withstand anything. So it's really important that people know the difference. And it's also important that you don't end up in a situation where, you're up against a group of muggers or something, and you remember that scene in the movie and you're like, now's my time. And you try to summon this like inner strength. Like none of that works and none of that's a thing. You will just get the shit kicked out of you. If you try to lift the 20,000 pound tractor, it will crush you and kill you. That's just a fact of life. So be smart. You need that for training. You need that to survive. Strategy has to revolve around real life, and the real outcome doesn't care about your fictional beliefs. So it's important that people straighten that out. Now, this brought up thoughts of other things. I've told you guys that I'm back in school trying to get a degree in psychology and philosophy. And through the psychology coursework, we're going through the big innovative psychologists. And one thing I'm noticing that's a problem is special reverence is still being given to people who were like really, really wrong because they were perceived as being a pioneer in some aspect. Like people still talk about Freud, but they talk openly about the shit he was wrong about because the field can't move forward if you don't acknowledge those things. And that's true of any science. But once you get into like the parts of sociology that very loosely like dip their toe in the psychology water without having to be accountable to actually doing that type of deep clinical work, you see a bunch of bullshit that gets passed around that is not connected to reality whatsoever. And in taking a sociology class and one of my psychology classes, actually, I had to learn about fucking Margaret Mead, who for some reason we still hold up as a pioneer of psychology, even though she was really, really wrong. She was a person who justly wanted to show that the really rigid gender standards were not hard and fast and that there was variability around the world. But like anybody with a bias at something to prove, she found it where it really wasn't there and kind of misrepresented it. So everybody cites Margaret Mead specifically for her discovery of the Chambuli tribe, which is now known as the Chambri tribe. Think of in the 1930s, your ability to go visit different tribes on a given trip. Could you visit 50? Could you visit 20? Could you visit 2? So it's kind of telling that she goes on this trip and comes back. It's like, oh my God, I found the proof. What she found were subtle variations in how these tribes arrange things that spun out into this like wild telling of like the women rule in the Chambuli tribe. And the fact is the women don't rule in the Chambuli tribe, just like they don't rule anywhere else unless there is a long, painstaking type of social reform that aims to correct what had to exist for so many tens of thousands of years of human existence. And Margaret Mead is also known for visiting Samoa before that and publishing a book, which is notorious because she was the victim of a hoax, meaning she was interrogating these young Samoan girls about their sexual social norms, trying to show that oppressive Western norms were not universal. And in going with that, the girls kind of went along and told her a story that was, they were playing a prank on her. But none of that gets discussed to this day. We still learn about the Chambuli tribe. And that's just like really dangerous. Like when you're fucking with complex systems, your actual knowledge of how things are put together matters. That determines how effective your approach is going to be. And if we keep giving passes to people just because we want something to be true, whether it's we want it to be true that we could just go get really angry and lift a fucking tractor, or if we want it to be true that our view of the complexities of human civilization over the entire span of the world and history is what we want it to be, and then we take that and we use that to inform our decisions, you're going to get a really bad result. That's not progress. That's the opposite of progress. That's called wishful thinking. Yes, I know I'm on Wikipedia, not exactly a primary source, but for the purposes of this video, we're going to settle for it. So the discussion talks about their history, Western influence, the people today, what their customs are, what they eat, what their economy's like. Then it goes to Chambri women, where it talks about Margaret Mead, because that is continuously published in books. I just took a test last week that had this question on it. She did field study in 1933 in Papua New Guinea, and she outlined a position of women in the Chambri community that was unusual to what had been thought to be the norm across culture. She speculated that women in the Chambri were the power individuals within the village instead of the men. She came to this conclusion because she noted that the women went fishing and took the fish into market to barter. So she saw the women as the providers, which must have meant, according to her Western-centric perspective, that means they have the power. However, as later anthropologists Deborah Gewirtz and Frederick Arrington discovered, these actions do not control the relationship between men and women of the Chambri. The women being the sole provider for the family does not imply submission by the man. In fact, you could argue it implies that the women are submissive because they have to go do all the work. The men in the Chambri society are involved in other areas within the community, many of which are not deemed appropriate for women. Such areas include politics and power within the tribe. Didn't mean to get all political with you, but that was on my mind. I drew a parallel and I wanted to cover that because I guess we're just myth busting today. That's what we're doing. So let me know what you guys think. Have you stumbled across stuff like this? What do you think? Do you exist in an academic field or in some like business or corporate world where stuff like this still pops up and throws a wrench in things? Let me know what you think. Do you still think that we actually can go Super Saiyan and then we can will ourselves to lift insane amounts of weight? Tell me why I'm wrong. Leave it in the comments. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Till next time, this is Bromley. I'll see you.